Okay, now that we have the agenda up and it is a little past 11, I would like to go ahead and get this meeting started and welcome everybody. Thank you all for being joining us today. I'm excited to have our speaker, and I'll introduce her in a little bit, but I would like to begin by opening us up in prayer. And would anybody like to give the invocation this morning?
I can do it, Mary.
Okay, thank you, Helen.
Yes, ma'am. Heavenly Father, we just come to you right now, Lord, in the name of Jesus. We just ask that you would open up our hearts, our minds, that we would receive what you would have us receive, Father God. We ask that you would just bless every organization, every business that's represented here today, Lord. I thank you for the servants that we have in our community, Father, that honor you, Lord. And I just say a special prayer for our speaker today, Lucy, Lord. I ask that you would be with her. And we just thank you for this opportunity to get together, Lord. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Miss Helen. I appreciate that. Okay, I kind of want to skip around a little bit. I need to change the order of the agenda because I always feel it's important to give our speaker as much time as possible. So I am going to move you, Lucy, to the bottom, and I want to do that so that we can just end with, your great presentation. I'm going to go ahead and move down to new business. I don't think that we have anything new. If anybody has anything that they would like to talk about, this is your opportunity to do that. Actually, I think, Jim, you might have something. I don't know that it would be considered new business, but it might be other business or announcements.
I'm just trying to unmute. There we go. Yeah, I'll just do a brief announcement. For those who are not aware, in the last 2 months, thanks to a partnership with an incredible local organization called StoryBridge, founded and run by Chandra Perkins, who I think is on this call. And we now have in Potter and Randall County something called Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. And what that makes possible, since we started in late March, is the fact that for every child between birth and their 5th birthday who we can sign up online or otherwise, and I encourage you to actually see the flyer that is on the screen right now. If you've got a child or know of one under 5 years old, go ahead and scan that, and you can begin the process of signing them up right now. But they would be receiving a free new age-appropriate book every single month up until their 5th birthday. And it's a 25-year-old program that Dolly Parton started in her home county in Tennessee back in the 90s. She now distributes roughly 1.7 million books a month throughout the country and in other countries, English-speaking countries, Canada, I think the UK and Ireland. And there are 31 other affiliates in Texas. And we could not be more excited about the prospects of what this could mean for our community, because one of the things that, 2 statistics that I'll leave everybody with is that the latest statistics regarding kindergarten readiness in Amarillo Independent School District show that only 37% of all children entering kindergarten are actually ready to learn to read. That means that 63% don't have enough familiarity with their letters, their numbers, their colors, their shapes, their sizes, all the sort of things that make someone ready to learn to read are missing. And this is really designed to be a huge, provide a huge impact towards kindergarten readiness, because when you're behind as you enter kindergarten, trying to make up that ground in the K through 12 system is really hard. And if you can make it up, before they get to kindergarten, which is what this is all about, it makes a huge difference. The other statistics I'll share is that 2 out of 3 families 2 out of 3 low-income families do not possess a single children's book. So book ownership is a huge factor when it comes to having children get some early literacy habits, being read to, and just getting familiar with books, so that books are not a scary thing when they enter kindergarten. And that's what this is all about. So we have a very ambitious goal. There's 17,000 children in the census in Parton and Randall County in that age group from birth to 5. Our target in the next 3 years is to enroll 10,000 of those, 60%. And we are not quite, or we're right at the 8-week mark in terms of our start of signups, and we have just crossed the 1,000 mark in terms of children enrolled. So we could not be happier. Our goal this year is to get to 2,500 before the year is out. And we really want everybody who has a child. It's not means tested at all. It's open to everyone. And the only restriction is the age, 0 to 5, and living, having a residence in Parton and Randall County. So if you can, take a picture of this, go to the Imagination Library website, go to the StoryBridge website, contact me, track me down however you can. We want to have we've got this up in various pediatrician offices around the counties, and they're continuing to sign up, and we just want to do that as quickly as possible. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you for the chance to mention that, Mary, and I hope everyone will have a chance to introduce this to others, and I know Lucy can appreciate the impact that this can have in our area.
Thank you, Jim. I think it's a great program. I see that a few of us have already signed up our kids or grandkids, and I'm excited because, yes, you're absolutely right. It's so important to begin reading to our kids at an early age. It's fun. It's a bonding experience, and it's just good for them. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. So we will go on to there was another announcement. Jerry, can you put the agenda back on? Sorry about that. I asked you to share and then I took it away from you. Oh yes, so as a reminder, we sponsored 10 kids to go to the Amarillo college camps that's happening at Sanborn Elementary. The college camps begin June 1st. I know that they are still needing volunteers and bottles of water. They were going to just have 100 kids sign up, but they have 175. So they need a few extra sets of hands and some bottles of water. So if you can help out or donate some water, please contact Linda Dominguez. Her telephone number is there on the screen. And if you don't mind doing that, we would appreciate it. Is there any other business that anybody would like to share before I turn it over to Miss Lucy?
Mary, I have something.
Okay.
So if this is just an announcement, if you know any women-owned small business, the Governor's Commission for Women and the Beacon State Fund, they're holding a small business pitch competition, and there's $7,500 up for grabs. So if you know anybody, send them our way to the SBDC. All the information is on our Facebook page, and I believe the deadline is coming up on Monday, May 30th. So some money up for grabs.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else? Okay, well then I am going to introduce Lucy. I'm just so excited to hear her. She has done some amazing things. She's originally from Freona, moved to Washington, D.C., did some amazing things there, and we are so happy that she is back in the Panhandle area. So Lucy is currently the Director of Community Engagement and Impact at the Amarillo Area Foundation, where she is responsible for the strategic development and its implementation, and contributes to stewarding new strategic partnerships and initiatives that build the foundation's impact, visibility, service, and thought leadership. Before joining the AAF, she was a senior analyst at the Education Forward DC, a grant-making organization focused on increasing the number of college and career-ready students in DC public schools. At Education Forward DC, Lucy worked as a funder on the public engagement team and provided grants to organizations working to amplify the voices of students and parents in public education. After graduating from Texas Tech University in 2013, she moved to Washington, D.C. to pursue her master's degree at American University, where her research led to the creation of the Listo College Prep program in 2014 in partnership with the DC Public High School Cardozo Education Campus. In 2014, the Listo program was recognized by the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for Hispanics as a bright spot in Hispanic education for its college access model and efforts to close the achievement gap for Hispanic students. Lucy later went on to intern for the White House Initiatives and would work to co-author the Graduate 2.0, a college planning guide to success, informed by her experiences as a first-generation student, as well as her research and practical experience creating and managing the Listo College Prep program. I'm going to have to take a pause. After receiving her master's degree from American University, Lucy transitioned to work at the national level to influence large-scale education initiatives and policy to better serve students. This included positions at Achieving the Dream, the U.S. Department of Education, and Hispanic Federation. Lucy was born and raised in Friona, Texas, and earned a BA in Political Science and Sociology from Texas Tech University and an MA in Sociology from American University in Washington, D.C. Lucy spent 7 wonderful years in D.C. and recently returned to the Texas Panhandle with her husband, Trey, to serve the people of the Panhandle and to be closer to family. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so excited to welcome you to Los Barrios de Amarillo. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary, for that really wonderful introduction. I'm so sorry. I would have kept it a little bit more brief if you were going to read it. So thank you for covering it all. But I'm really excited to be here, and thank you to Mary and to the leadership of Los Barrios for inviting me really a few months back to come and speak about a lot of the work that the foundation has been really looking at over the last year and kind of where we're moving forward in the future. When I first met Mary, really back in early 2021, just a few months ago, was kind of sharing with her a little bit about the data that we had collected at the organization, and we're really looking and was the data that was really informing kind of our decision making and the direction we will eventually move towards as a foundation. So super excited to be here with you all. I am going to start my timer because I really want to be mindful of time. There's a lot of really good information here, and so I want to reserve enough time for Q&A. So I'm just going to ask if you have questions as I'm kind of going through the data and presentation. If you want to drop them in the chat, or if you want to just write them off to the side. You know, there's going to be some pieces in here that we can get stuck on for 20 minutes. And so just want to make sure we give ourselves enough time to get through. And then would love to just, have a conversation at the end and kind of really get from you all what your key takeaways are. Before we really start digging into the data, I'm going to just spend a few minutes talking about the Amarillo Area Foundation, what we do. I think since I moved back here about a year ago, I've had the opportunity to meet with really wonderful folks in the community. And, I've realized that, there's some individuals who may know about our flagship programs like ACE and Thrive, the Panhandle Gives, but may not always make that connection back to the Amarillo Area Foundation. And so want to talk about how wonderful the organization is, all the really great work we do before kind of digging into some of the data. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So in terms of our foundings as a foundation, as an organization, so we were founded in 1957. And so we were incorporated as a community foundation in 57. And that was really the beginning origins of the foundation. At our inception, really a lot of our work back then was really focused on the Harrington Regional Medical Center. And so what we come to realize now as just the medical center here on Coulter and Wallace Boulevard. It was about 3 years later that the foundation acquired about 300 acres of land between a partnership between Potter County, private landowners, and a few of the existing partner organizations in the hospital district as well. And so our early origins are really tied to the founding of the Harrington Regional Medical Center that would later then transition to BSA. We have some really great photos that capture kind of the history and origins of the organization. It was a few years later that the Harrington Regional Medical Center, which is still in existence today and has really become its own entity with a board of directors and their own grant cycles, that organization eventually became a sub-organization of the foundation, and we still work in close partnership with the HRMC. I think many of you guys are familiar with the organization and that part of the medical campus. I think the most recent work that has now been completed is the selling of land to develop the Harrington Cancer Center that I think was just completed and is now located across from BSA. So in terms of us as an organization, so ultimately our mission is to improve the quality of life for Texas Panhandle residents. And so we really do that as a foundation. Our area of focus is really the top 26 counties of the Texas Panhandle. And a big part of our work as an organization is ensuring that we are able to, as a community foundation, to collectively pull the resources that enable us to fulfill our mission. So how we accomplish that is primarily through grant making. I think that most folks are familiar with. But we also run education programs like ACE and Thrive. We also have a big part of our work includes nonprofit support through our nonprofit support center. And then my favorite part is convening communities and partners. And then of course, connecting donors to their passions. So in terms of the engagement we have with donors, so there's a few different ways for donors who are interested in giving to partner with the foundation. We maintain, I believe the count is 360 different funds that all accomplish very different things. But some of our most common types of funds are scholarship funds, our agency funds, field of interest, donor advised, endowed, and independently managed. I know we have our donor team on the call as well, so I do not want to mess up any or misrepresent any of their work, but I know if you're interested in learning more, definitely visit our website, Amarillo Area Foundation.org. The other really exciting part of our work as a foundation and in supporting nonprofits are our development campaigns. So we have Panhandle Partners in Philanthropy, or P3, which is really just a membership opportunity for folks to join the foundation and really be a partner in giving. The Panhandle Gives, which I think maybe many of you are familiar with, is kind of like our flagship development program. And it's led by Amy Lovell and the rest of our donor service team. It's a really, really great campaign to support nonprofits in the region. And I'll talk a little bit more about it on the next slide, but I think this is really just an opportunity to really think about how we support nonprofits in raising additional funds to help support their ongoing work and expansion of services to more people in the region that need it. And then Future Focus is just another development campaign that really focuses on how do we build the sustainability of the area's nonprofits through endowments and matching dollars for that. So the Panhandle Gives, this is honestly one of my favorite things, and it just hits at a really great time of the year. So the Panhandle Gives is a campaign that I apologize if I mess up the dates, but it's a 9-day campaign that runs prior to the Global Day of Giving, known as Giving Tuesday. And so what our really wonderful team here at the foundation does is they've launched the Panhandle Gives, and just to kind of hype them up for a little bit, you know, the Panhandle Gives has really been recognized nationally as a program for both the excitement and collaborative nature of the campaign, but also because it really raises a substantial amount of funding for the area's nonprofits. And the really great thing about this is of the nonprofits that participate in the Panhandle Gives, 100% of funds raised go directly back to the nonprofit. And so we've really set that up as a foundation to make sure we cover whatever fees necessary on the back end so that those 9 days of giving are going directly to the nonprofits that participate. In 2020, we had about 154 nonprofits engage in the campaign, and we had about 23 different communities represented across 19 different counties in the Texas Panhandle. So it was a really large campaign, really great things to come out of it. And I'm sure, like many of you, we didn't really know what to expect going into 2020, right? Like we had the Panhandle Gives and we knew it was coming up in November, but it was such an unpredictable year. I'm just grateful that we live in such a generous area and region here in the Texas Panhandle, because it was one of our record-breaking years, and the campaign itself raised about a little over 3.5 million. So if you haven't, I'm also going to plug this for our donor services team, but if you haven't registered yet and you're a nonprofit leader, have about 5 days left to register for the Panhandle Gives, which again will be happening in November of this year. So shifting now a little bit to programs and grant making, and I'm just going to go quickly through these again so we can give ourselves enough time at the end. But our formal grant making program began through a bequest of about $2 million from Don Harrington. And this was really the first opportunity that gave the foundation the resources to launch a formal grant making program and then also hire staff. In 1988, we received a major gift from the Don and Sybil Harrington Foundation, where they switched from a private foundation to then become a sub-organization of the Amarillo Area Foundation. And so with that gift, it really allowed about 15% of those assets to become unrestricted. And that really helped us launch some of our large scale initiatives that eventually would become, programs like ACE and Thrive that have really helped support so many students here in the region. In terms of grant opportunities, again, one of the big pieces of our work is supporting nonprofits directly through grants. So we have 4 different grant categories at the foundation. I'm not going to go through all of them, but these 4 grant categories all have distinct and different eligibility requirements, different grant amounts. Please visit our website, AmarilloAreaFoundation.org, to learn a little bit about these grant opportunities. These grants are provided directly to 501c3 nonprofits that are in good standing with the IRS. In terms of upcoming grant opportunities, also just to plug this for our grants team, we have an economic opportunity round. I think that will be closing June 23rd or June 28th. Again, please visit our website for those specific dates. But that grant round is for projects greater than 20,000. And those projects are reviewed by staff. And we have a really great grants programs team that reviews those applications and really works with nonprofits to help support some awesome projects here in the region. And then finally, I know part of my background has just always been in education. And so I'm really most proud of the work that the foundation has done over the years and their commitment to education in the region. So in terms of our work as an organization, so our first scholarship was established back in 1971, and since then has grown to about 100 different funds that support scholarships for students in the region. And annually, we distribute about $2 million in scholarships to the area students. That's between programs such as ACE and Thrive, but also just our scholarships that are given to high school students and current students attending higher education institutions in the state of Texas. And so plug for the scholarships team is we will every year our scholarships open in December and applications are collected from December to February. So if you guys know of any rising high school seniors, let them know that the foundation does have scholarship opportunities, and we're always excited to support kids across the region in pursuing their higher education dreams. So I want to take a little bit of a pause and kind of shift now to, this is the history of the foundation and kind of all the work that has brought us to where we are today. So, we are in our 63rd year and going on to 64. And a few years ago, our board of directors, for our 60th anniversary, really took the time to step back and reflect on the work that the foundation had done over those years. And one of the things that we really, that the board at that time was really thinking about is just, what does the next 60 years of our work look like in service to residents of the Texas Panhandle? And one of the things that our board really came away with, and I'm trying to, give me a second, I'm trying to arrange things on my screen. One of the things that our board really came away with from that point of reflection and then kind of thinking about our work moving forward was a new strategic plan. And from that, you know, I think many of you have either worked for nonprofits, served on boards of nonprofits. There's a tendency, right, to think about going through the work of doing a strategic plan. We put it in a binder and we stick it on the shelf and we come back to it in, you know, a year and see how we've done, or, you know, see how we're tracking against our goals. But I think what the foundation is doing that's a little bit different, and that really excites me, is we're gonna live and breathe the strategic plan for the next several years. And so really have all of the priorities and focus areas really driving our work, and have everyone across the organization and our partners in the community really moving towards some of these goals that we've identified as having a significant impact and the potential to impact the lives of residents in the areas. So what this means is we'll be refocusing the area's foundation needs on economic opportunity, on health, and on education attainment. And one of the things, and one of the reasons why we really wanted to focus on this is, you know, our board realized that all of these things are so interconnected, right? Like being able to show up in school and learn, you know, is really going to be a lot easier if you're well fed and you have access to healthcare and health insurance, or even mental and behavioral health that will allow you to show up and learn in school. And so because all of these are so interconnected, we really are taking the approach of addressing them simultaneously. The next thing that, you know, the next directive we really received from the board is to really engage with subject matter experts in some of these areas. One of the things is, you know, we don't consider ourselves the experts in any of this work. We're really going to be looking to our nonprofit partners, both existing and new, who are the experts in this area and have been doing this work day in and day out. I think about Storybridge and Chandra, you know, she's doing this work day in and day out. She's on the ground and really knows what the needs are of the community. And so the foundation is really excited to partner and elevate the phenomenal work that has been happening in communities and really leverage partnerships where we can bring folks together to just reach more people in a meaningful way. I think the next thing is we're really aiming to create about 3 to 5 focus projects within each of these categories that are impactful and attainable. Give ourselves enough time to see and track those changes. And then finally, creating some regional metrics that will help us as an organization and us with our partners define goals and success in these areas. So when we look up in 10 years, how will we know that we, you know, made progress in literacy? How will we know if we made progress in college and higher education attainment? Those are examples of those regional metrics that will help us define success down the road. So in terms of just our work moving forward, so like I said, our board really gave us this directive of these are the big areas that we really want to focus on. But I think then came the following question of, okay, well, these are really broad. So where do we really want to dedicate time and resources to really understand where there are most pressing needs? So back in 2020, I spent about 4 to 5 months really doing a lot of research and data collection. Couldn't do much else, so why not take on this massive research project? And so one of the big things was collecting a substantial amount of data in each of these areas. So we did it for education, we did it for health, and we did it for economic opportunity, essentially what we called our baseline data. And so after this data was collected, what we did is we then engaged the foundation staff. We engaged steering committees that were made up of experts and practitioners in each of these distinct fields. So we had a health steering committee, we had an education steering committee, an economic opportunity steering committee. What we did is we brought this information to those steering committees, to our board, to our staff, and said, here's what the reality looks like for residents in the Panhandle across all 26 counties in each of these areas, and then really asked our steering committees and boards what feels most pressing to address and where do we feel like we can have the most impact. And so from those conversations, from the data, from the research, our steering committees really decided to make an impact and really help improve the lives of residents in the Panhandle, we really need to focus on early childhood education and literacy. And then we also need to focus on higher education attainment. And I think that's really important to talk about, right? Because it's not just, hey, we're going to focus on the kids once they're graduating and they're going off, but let's really think about the education system as a spectrum and really thinking about an approach of cradle to career. In health, our steering committee there decided food insecurity and mental and behavioral health were critically important, and particularly for some of our rural areas where we're seeing the need, and particularly as a result of 2020, a little bit exacerbated. When it came to economic opportunity, our steering committee, board, and staff decided to really focus on broadband access and arts and culture. So these are some of, within the categories we have, some of the priority areas that we'll be pursuing in our work moving forward. So that's kind of where we're at right now with the work. And so what we're going to be walking through right now, we've coined the state of education internally. And again, this is just the baseline data that our foundation staff, that our steering committees, and that our board of directors really reviewed in fall of 2020 to help us in defining some of the priority areas. And so in terms of the, before we kind of get into the data, it'll be separated into 3 sections. And before we really dig into it, I think it's really important that we kind of all level set and have the same information as we're kind of looking through the data so that we have similar lens as we're reviewing. I think as a foundation, we are focused on providing services to the full 26 counties. So the lens that we took is a little bit higher at the Panhandle level. So we're going to go through information that looks at Region 16, and then we'll drill down a little bit further at the district level, and then getting into Canyon ISD and Amarillo ISD, our larger school districts. So first things first, in terms of just Texas Panhandle counties, so we have 26 counties and a little over 400,000 residents that live here. We have really segmented the counties into what we consider our large counties. So those that have a population greater than 10,000, our medium counties with populations between 5,000 and 10,000, and then our small counties with populations less than 5,000. So when we think about how population is distributed across each of these counties, about 80% of people that live in the Texas Panhandle live in these large counties in the column to the left. We have about 14% of residents that live in our medium counties, and then about 6% of just our residents that live in these smaller counties with populations less than 5,000. And when we kind of think about students within the Texas Panhandle, so based on school year 2017-2018 enrollment data, there are approximately 81,205 students who attend a K-12 public school here in the Texas Panhandle. And so to put that number of Panhandle students in perspective and in context of K-12 school districts in Texas, the number of students in the Panhandle is the same as Austin ISD. That has an enrollment of about 81,650. So when we think about comparison in terms of size and number of students, we really need to be thinking about the same number and size as Austin ISD. I think one of the biggest takeaways as we were looking through the data is the number of low-income students that we serve here in the Panhandle. So across the Panhandle, about 55% of our students are considered economically disadvantaged. So that's about 44,000. And that means, you know, they qualify for free or reduced lunch. And one thing that was really interesting is, again, as we started digging down into the data, when you look at school districts with the largest percent of economically disadvantaged students, they're really here at this graph at the bottom. So Hart ISD has the largest percentage of economically disadvantaged students at about 90%. On the far right, you have LBdA, which is at about 75%. So just think about this in terms of students, right? Like 1 in 4 students at LBdA are considered economically disadvantaged. And what's really interesting is then when we look at the school districts with the largest concentration of economically disadvantaged students, they're found in 5 counties. It's Castro, Hall, Palmer, Potter, and Swisher. And so again, being at the district level, so the Panhandle provides K-12 education across a total of 64 school districts across the region. So this is 64 different school districts. different superintendents, different governance structures, different locations, different issues, right? And so it's a very complex system that we're dealing with here in the Texas Panhandle. By and large, Amarillo ISD is the largest school district in the region, and they serve about 32,000 students within itself across 55 different campuses. And so when we look at our largest school districts, AISD is of course the lead, followed by Canyon ISD, which serves about 10,000 students as well. As we kind of go through the presentation, we'll be comparing AISD to Canyon ISD. But one thing that I think is really important for us to know and to spend some time on is these school districts are very different in terms of the makeup of their student bodies, right? So AISD, by and large, is serving a majority economically disadvantaged student body, whereas it's kind of the inverse relationship when we look at Canyon ISD. When we think about demographics and we think about language spoken, it's even more complex. And so just keep that in mind as we're looking at this data, because I think it's really important that we understand the nuances of some of the data that we're looking at and potentially some of the complexity that some of these school districts are dealing with as well. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me too, in looking at some of this demographic data that we collected, is that shift that we've all been talking about. You know, the majority Hispanic schools, the majority Hispanic region, the majority Hispanic Texas, it's already happening in our school districts today. So when we looked at, again, that 2017-2018 enrollment data, the majority of students in our K-12 schools here in the Texas Panhandle are Hispanic. So that's at about 48%. When we look at white students, that's only at about 42%. And then the other 10% of students is really made up of Black, Asian, and students that identify as two or more races. And so I think as we think about the future and start making plans for how do we better support students in our region, we really have to acknowledge that the majority of our students will be Hispanic now, and to really understand how we better serve these students in our existing school systems, but also think about their futures when it comes to higher education enrollment trends, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. So that's just baseline. As we now pivot into the data itself, just a baseline of where we're at in the Panhandle, what our demographics look like, and what the reality is when it comes to our student body. So kicking off into the importance of early childhood education, I'm sure many of us on the call, know about the importance of early childhood education. Some of the benefits in the research prove that students are less likely to repeat a grade, less likely to be identified as having special needs. These students are more prepared academically for later grades, more likely to graduate from high school. And there's even benefits that translate into adulthood. So students that receive, or adults that receive quality early childhood education early on, have shown to have greater long-term benefits, including behavioral health and educational outcomes, but also that has been linked to decreased rates of poverty and then breaking intergenerational poverty as well. And so when we consider, our early childhood education system, the foundation, when we started looking at the benchmarks for third grade literacy, proficiency, we really started asking the questions when it came to just root cause, right? So if in third grade, few of our students are reading at grade level, where do we need to backtrack to really see, okay, where can we actually have an impact? And so that took us then to kindergarten readiness assessments, which we'll also review as well. But then even before then, we really laid this out and said, okay, if you're a child from 0 to 8, obviously in third grade, you're being benchmarked for literacy proficiency, but what does your life look like up until that point? And one of the things that we really, that has really shifted our focus and attention is, if we as an organization are going to focus on third grade literacy, we absolutely have to figure out and focus and support this early childhood education piece from age 0 to 5. And what this timeline shows right here is 90% of brain development in a child happens by the age of 6, right? And if you transpose this to our formal education system, those early years kids are mostly existing outside of our formal K through 12 system. So if we really want to support kids and make sure that they're set up to be successful, we have to start thinking about how we really support these kids, again, 0 to 5, which is why work like Storybridge, like Amarillo Public Library, like Head Start, early Head Start are so critical, because those are the early years where children are developing, their brain is developing really rapidly. And we want to make sure that they're set up to be successful when they're walking through that school door in kindergarten day 1. And I will say that as we're beginning to move into this work of early childhood education as an organization, it's incredibly complex, but it's worth working on. And the reason why is we have about 32,000 children under the age of 5 in the Texas Panhandle. And when you look at just where these students, again, are concentrated, about 75% of them are either in Potter, Randall, Moore, Duff Smith, or Gray. And so when we think about how we reach the most students, right, we also have to think about where are these students located and how can we make sure that the supports exist within these counties so that we're reaching the most kids. And just to kind of show you how complex early childhood education is, I have this funding map that I came across from Early Learning Lab. And what it shows is, again, just the complexity of the system that both parents have to navigate, but that also, you know, I saw Jill Goodrich was on here, right, as an executive director for an early child care center, organizations like Workforce Solutions, Texas Workforce Commission, right? It's such a complex system. And what you have here at the bottom is these are our program service providers, right? So it's our community-based early childhood centers, our family child homes. Here, family, friends, and neighbors, note that there's no funding that goes to these individuals. And, you know, these are the mom and pop shops that are popping up in neighborhoods so that families can get to work and have reliable childcare. And then kind of what this really then extends from is just, you know, the array of federal agencies that are engaged in some way in the early childhood system, the federal programs that exist, the complexity of it just traveling down to the state level, local level, really before it reaches even these service providers. And so wanted to just share that to really demonstrate that it's work worth doing, but it's going to be really hard work because the system is so complex, right? But if we want to give kids a better chance at success, it's an area that we really have to start focusing on and building supports around. So now moving on to kindergarten readiness and literacy. As we're looking through this data, again, keep in mind that kindergarten readiness really just measures a kid when they show up day 1 in school, and we are benchmarking them for readiness to learn. And so in Texas, we maintain the Texas Kindergarten Readiness System, and it's a voluntary system that evaluates the effectiveness of pre-K, of Head Start, and again, those community-based licensed childcare programs in preparing kids for kindergarten. The one thing to note about the state of Texas is school districts are able to choose their own assessment for kindergarten readiness. So currently there isn't really uniformity across the system, but with the latest education bill in 2019, it's really the latest education bill in 2019 has asked the Commissioner of Education to develop one tool so that as we move forward in the future, we're really comparing apples to apples when it comes to kindergarten readiness and not comparing a district that used this tool with a district that used another one. That may not be the same. So just something to note as a positive change moving forward. In terms of just the reality here, right? So we are comparing Region 16 Amarillo, our neighbors in Region 17, and then Region 13 in Austin. So when we look at kindergarten readiness by race ethnicity, this was for the year 2019, pre-pandemic. In Amarillo, so Region 16, only 37% of our Hispanic students were deemed kindergarten ready compared to 60% of white students, 35% of Black students, and 26% of Asian students. And so I think this is really important, right? That we're disaggregating the data, because if we just kind of took this as an average, our white students would be bringing up the average. But when we really break this down, right, we can really see where there's a need and an opportunity for us to step up and do a little bit better for all students in the region. When we take Region 16 just by itself, right? So, and look at it over time. So from 2017 to 2019, The region as a whole has experienced decline in kindergarten readiness, but it's been true within every single racial and ethnic subgroup in the area. So when we look at, again, 2019, we have 59% of white students that are deemed kindergarten ready versus 37% for Hispanic, 35% for Black students, and then 29% for Asian students. But, it's kind of concerning, right? That not only is this happening for white students, but there are just significant gaps, particularly when we look at Asian students from 2017 to 2019, right? Like that's fallen pretty substantially, and it just keeps trending down. And so I think this is a really good opportunity. And this is, and actually, let me pause and say, this hasn't even included 2020 data, right? And so it'll be really interesting to see what comes out of the data when it's released later this year. But it's just something for us to all be mindful of, that pre-pandemic, it was already going down. And so we really need to start thinking about how we really support, and in many cases, we'll need to catch up some of the kids that are being left behind. When we look at what these trends look like for economically disadvantaged students, again, in Region 16 year over year, again, just going back to the fact that 55% of our students attending a K through 12 school in Region 16 is considered economically disadvantaged, we're again starting to see those declines here as well. And I think for us, as educators, as leaders in the community, really need to be paying attention to this, because we are by and large failing most of our students, in the area without some systemic interventions in the early childhood education space, that period 0 to 5. When we look at the comparison between Amarillo ISD and Canyon ISD, so kindergarten readiness here decreased pretty substantially. And Jim, I think you mentioned this at the beginning, right? It was only 37.1 in 2019-2020. When we look at that trend over time, it's actually decreased about 22% since school year 2016-2017, really in line with the entire region as well. When we look at Canyon ISD, so their readiness has increased by 1.6% from the previous school year. And for the most part, they have really seen increases in even those students that are attending public pre-K for 80 or more days in the year before. Again, as we're looking at kindergarten readiness for these students, keep two things in mind, right? The first is these school districts represent about 50% of our students in the entire region. And the second thing is Amarillo ISD serves a very different student body than Canyon ISD, right? And so as we're looking at these kindergarten readiness rates in 2019-2020, we have to keep in mind the demographic shifts that have even happened in the city. Probably the prevalence of a greater number of L students entering the school districts, which we know by and large fail, those standardized tests fail those students as well. And so just keep those in mind as we're really looking at the comparison between AISD and Canyon. So getting to third grade reading, I know there are definitely some questionable things around the STAR test. And so obviously not a place to engage in that conversation, or this is not the time to engage in those conversations, but I do want to acknowledge them, right? There are some things that could be improved about the STAR test and just testing and the testing culture overall. But for the purpose of, today's conversation, really wanted to use STAR as that benchmark for us to get a uniform perspective of how students are doing across Region 16. So currently STAR rates students in did not meet grade level, approaches grade level, meets grade level, which means students have a high likelihood of success in the next grade, and then master's grade level, which means students are expected to succeed in the next grade with little to no academic intervention. And so we'll be looking at how our students performing in each of these areas, and then break it down by race, ethnicity as well. So taking the high level view of Region 16 as a whole, like the trends we see in kindergarten readiness rates, there are significant gaps by race, ethnicity for students reading at grade level. Again, these really mirror some of our kindergarten readiness rates. So it's not that they're going away. Like I think we have to take away that kids are starting behind and that gap is not closing as they move through school. And so similarly, I think the region saw some slight declines within racial and ethnic subgroups for students reading at grade level between 2017 and 18 as well. When we compare ourselves again to Lubbock and Austin, the area's third grade literacy performance rates are really in line and similar to student subgroups in other regions. But I will say that as a whole, Texas ranks 45th in third grade literacy in the entire United States, right? So it's great that we're keeping pace with these other regions, but I think there's still a whole lot of area for improvement and supporting our kids at this level as well. When we break it down by race, ethnicity, and look at the percentage of Black students mastering, meeting, and approaching grade level, and the same for Hispanic students and white students, again, you just see these gaps that are still really pronounced and that are there among our student population and groups. When we look at, just take master's grade level for Black students in 2018, that was about 10%. For Hispanic students in 2018, that was only 17. When we look at our white students in 2018, that was about 32%. So more than double what, you know, our Black and Hispanic students are experiencing. And again, you know, this data is just really helpful for us to really be thinking about where we need to provide additional support to our students, and particularly as we consider the context of those demographic shifts that are happening in our area as well. Then finally, when we look at AISD and Canyon ISD, again, both school districts serve very different student bodies. But one thing that I will say here, and that really stood out to me, is when we look at economically disadvantaged students, right? In 2018, the percentage of economically disadvantaged students meeting grade level reading was only 35%. And that was also only 38% in Canyon ISD. I think for me, what this is really telling of is we still haven't really figured out how to best support those economically disadvantaged students, whether you're in a school district like AISD or you're in a school district like Canyon ISD. I think it's just really telling that there's still some room for growth and opportunity to really figure out how we best support these students in their education career. And then, Mary, I know we're like literally coming up on time. And so I'm going to go really quickly through graduation and immediate college enrollment for folks that have to jump. Here, when it comes to high school graduation, the biggest thing here is, for the most part, our schools are hovering at about 95%, 100% high school graduation rates, with the exception of Childress and F. Smith. When we start thinking about immediate college when we think about high school graduation and then immediate college enrollment, again, just wanted to highlight what the trends are at the state level when it comes to these different student subgroups, right? So when we start thinking about, okay, how do we best support Hispanic students? How do we best support Black students? We really have this opportunity to look at what are their trends, right, in terms of immediate college enrollment. And I think two things that are that really stand out is when it comes to Hispanic students, they tend to overwhelmingly enroll in public two-year universities. So we have a really great institution here in Amarillo College to really help these students to succeed. On the flip side of that, right, is when we look at the trends among Black students in the state of Texas, 52% are considered, it's called not tracked or not found, which means after they graduate from high school, we literally are unable to track the opportunities that they're pursuing, the opportunities that they're accessing, and just in general, what are the opportunities that are available to those students. So those are two, I think, high-level takeaways to really think about. How do we understand the needs of some of these students, and then how do we build systems to best support them moving forward? Looking at the 2019 higher education enrollment trends. So the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board annually collects and releases data for high school graduates from each academic year. And this is for students that immediately enroll in a public or independent higher education institution in the fall following graduation. So, you know, we're in the middle of graduation season. So all these students that are going to be enrolling in school next fall, in 2022, we'll have the data release for where these kids went. One thing as we're looking at this 2019 data, there were about 5 counties excluded from the data release in 2019. They were Briscoe, Hartley, Lipscomb, Roberts, and Wheeler. One thing to note about the 2019 class is in the Texas Panhandle, there were a total of about 4,900 graduates that graduated from our K-12 school districts here in the region. About 51% of those students immediately enrolled in higher education, so about 2,500. The flip side of that is we lost about an equal amount of students that were kind of in this not tracked or found category. And so that, I think, is a little bit of like a punch in the gut, right? Of like, we don't know where these kids are going and we don't know how to best support them. When it came to, of the students that did decide to enroll in college following high school graduation, about 41% or 2,000 decided to stay in the state of Texas. And then of those that stayed or here in the state, about 1,900 are attending a institution in the Texas Panhandle or South Plains region. And then only a small fraction of those students are deciding to opt out of state. And I think one of the things that's really important is, since being back the last year, I've really heard this narrative around we're losing our kids to other regions. Actually, the data is telling us of the kids that are enrolling in school, they're actually staying here by and large. And so I think that there's this window of opportunity where our kids are deciding to opt into our really great colleges and universities here in the region. I think we just have to start thinking about what opportunities exist for them after they complete, or if they stop out, how do we support them in making sure that they still have access to living wage and family sustaining jobs. Not gonna spend too much time here. I think the only big takeaway here is our immediate college enrollment rate is about 51%. That immediate college enrollment rate for national average is about 66. So again, there's about a 15 percentage point gap to what our national rate is as well. When we look at immediate college enrollment by counties, really the only county that is exceeding that national rate of 66% is Armstrong County. By and large, even at 51% for our area rate, there are only a few counties that are really bringing up the average. But then you have these counties like Childress, like Deaf Smith, that already have lower high school graduation rates that are also having lower immediate college enrollment rates. So Childress is at 38%, Deaf Smith is at 37%. So that means that for those school districts in those counties, only 37% of their students are immediately enrolling in college following graduation. Then when we kind of look at the breakdown of the kids that do enroll, where are they really going to? Again, I think there's this huge opportunity we have of kids are staying here, right? They're overwhelmingly enrolling in Amarillo College. The rest are heading to WT, Texas Tech, Frank Phillips, Clarendon. And we really just have to start thinking about, they're staying here. Let's use that window of opportunity to make sure that they do stay here, and we're not building the workforce for Dallas, Fort Worth, for Houston, for Austin, but are making sure that our kids are staying here and helping us to build a vibrant economy and robust workforce for the future. Final couple of slides, we're really just looking at, after we are getting kids into school, what does education attainment and outcomes look like? This table at the right just really shows the United States, Texas, and then where the Texas Panhandle as a whole is also performing. The biggest thing that we are just not doing really well at is getting kids into college, but which is this some college, no degree, right? 25% of our population has gone to college, but didn't complete a degree. And so when we start thinking about student debt and being able to repay some of those finances from maybe going into college, but not graduating or completing, we really need to start thinking about how we better support those students as well, so that our rates when it comes to associates, to bachelor's, and even graduate or professional is more in line with Texas and the United States overall. And then I think the last slide, I was going to go over Amarillo College, WT, but we can save that for another day. I think the other thing is, this is really just taking that Texas Panhandle perspective view of educational attainment in the area. So overall, we've done really well with bachelor's degree, particularly here in Randall County. 21% of that population holds a bachelor's degree, whereas the difference in Potter County is about 10%. So this just kind of gives us a high-level overview of degree attainment for associates, bachelor's, and graduate and professional degrees. And then I'm going to stop talking because, one, I know we're at time, but I want to leave these key takeaways up here, because I think for me, the team at the foundation, our board of directors, these were some of the biggest takeaways we had in demographics, in early childhood education and literacy, and even college access and completion. But want to stop there. Mary, hand it over to you. And then for the folks that have stuck around, just take some questions and talk about kind of what your thoughts are as well.
Well, my thoughts are that this information is amazing. I mean, you just blew me away with your presentation. I'm not going to talk either. I'm going to open it up to questions. Yeah, I agree, Beth. It's great, great information. Does anybody have any questions for Lucy? Lucy, it has been asked if we can have a copy of this PowerPoint.
Lucy,
yeah, so
I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. So my really great colleague Brock is on the call. So he's our marketing comms person. So let me just get with him, make sure I can clear it through our proper channels, and then we'll share that as well, Mary.
Okay.
This is Helen, and I just want to say, Lucy, this information was phenomenal. I mean, I started serving on the board of the Amarillo Area Foundation in January, and I had no idea what all they did. So I think we just need to do a better job at advocating and sending people to the website. So I just want to thank you. This was great. I'm glad I hopped on.
This is Jill at Opportunity School, and I want to say thank you as well, Lucy. I'd love to meet with you and visit with you. I just sent you an email, but I'm really glad that we are finally, to hear you focus on the importance of early childhood education. Those of you that have been part of the Operation First 5 network, and we've been working on this for some time. So glad to have you be part of those champions for young children. Because it is so very important to create that strong foundation. So thank you for raising the visibility of that issue in our community.
Thank you, Jill.
Yeah, of course. And, I think for me, the really exciting part of philanthropy, right, is both the ability to innovate, but the ability to support really great folks like Jill, like Storybridge, like even Sandra, right, at AC doing dual credit. It's really about, let's support the folks that are doing this work day in and day out and are doing really great work for the community. And so that's ultimately what I'm really excited about, what I hope this information helps us do.
Yes, Lucy's amazing. I'm so glad she's back home to share the passion here in the Panhandle. And I can't bully her around anymore because she has a title. So I will be nice to her as my little cousin. But she immediately reached out and to AC, and we started talking. So I'm just excited. I mean, we see where we need the work to be done. And so we're just ready to get to work now. So I'm so excited. Good job, Lucy. So proud. This is a proud moment for our family.
That's so sweet. Well, okay. If there are no other questions, then Lucy, thank you for, this was great information. You did a great job in providing us and opening our eyes. I had no idea about some of the statistics you showed with the different counties. It's very eye-opening. So thank you. Oh, there's some more in the chat. Hold on. Oh, yes. Yeah, you did a great job of assimilating all the data. It's very informative. Absolutely. So I think that Brock shared her information, but Lucy Mendez Polston, you can find her on the website for Amarillo Area Foundation. If you need more additional information or even to chat with her, I know she loves to meet up for coffee. So she would be open to that. Yeah. But thank you guys for joining Los Barrios again. Our next meeting is going to be on July the 28th. We will have Shelley Bohannon, who is the executive director for the Bridge. That will be another wonderful meeting. She is going to talk to us about what we need to know, what we need to be on the lookout for, how we can help identify some kids in crisis, and also how it affects their education. So please join us July the 28th, again at 11 o'clock. It'll be on Zoom, and I will post it on our Facebook page. So thank you guys again, and y'all have a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.